Welcome to the Built by You program. Today is Notes from the Field number 26, and we'll be discussing the customer voice surveys, however, the customization of those using survey variables, and then using those variables in a Power Automate to send the survey, and then seeing the results in the DataVerse. Let's start with a custom survey. And in this particular case, we have a question, and what we want to do is capture some variables from the DataVerse using the Power Automate flow, pass those variables values from the DataVerse into the flow, which then sends it to the survey. So the very first step that you have to do is you click on your survey here on the left in Customer Voice, and you click on Customization, and then you click on Personalization. And you can see here that they give you a couple of variables to begin with, first and last name and locale. But in our particular case, we want to use something called full name, which is the full name of the contact that's stored in the DataVerse. So we've added a variable. We've called it full name. We don't need to enter a default value. We've also added one called company name. And you can see here, hi full name, scheduled meeting with company name. Does company name have the resources? And all you have to do is first build your variables, whatever they are, and then put them in this syntax right here in the context of your actual customer voice survey. So here we've got two left curly brackets followed by this name of the variable followed by two right curly brackets. Now, that's the only thing you have to do in Customer Voice. The rest is done in Power Automate. So we'll switch there now. Now you can see that we have three very simple steps. And let's talk about what we're actually doing here, because this is kind of important. Let's talk about it from the context of the DataVerse itself. So we're in the DataVerse or Microsoft Dynamics, and we have a contact here. And so in this particular case, we happen to have an option set, and we've decided that we're going to trigger the sending of the survey based on an option set change. And we'll show you what that looks like inside of Power Automate. But here's the option set. And so you can see here there's the pre-appointment, there's milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3. It's on the completion of those three things. Now, the current Power Automate that we have doesn't actually check to see which one of these have been selected, and those would be conditional statements. But we wanted to keep this really simple, so the idea here is that it simply runs on the change of this field. Now, there is a company name, and when there's a company name, that's what we call a lookup in the DataVerse or in Microsoft Dynamics or Power Apps, or whatever you're using. And a lookup means that there's a lot of information behind this company. If I were to click on it, you'd see all the information about the company. And so when we make that call and retrieve that information in the Power Automate flow, we're going to get all of that information. And we're going to get something like, for instance, the name of the company. Now, this is just a real quick aside, but from a technical standpoint, even though it says the company name right here in this field, technically, and from the standpoint of, let's say, Power Automate, that's actually stored as a GUID. It's stored as the unique identifier of the company, of the account related to the contact. That's what's actually stored there. So what you really have to do is you have to go in and get the company name. Now, we know, because it's the DataVerse, that we have something called full name. And full name is the concatenation of first, last, and I believe middle. Maybe it's just first and last. But anyway, it's full name, and we're using full name. So we already have that, and we're going to go ahead and use that. But see what's going on here. So we've got a contact, and when this is changed, we're going to trigger this flow. It's going to grab the name of the company from the actual company lookup, and then it's going to send the survey. And we're also going to pass some variables. So remember what we did. We created some variables back in Customer Voice. So let's look at our flow in detail now. So right now, when survey to send is changed on contact. Now this is a simple DataVerse step, and it's called created, added, or modified. It's added or modified. So that's the trigger. The trigger is when something changes in the DataVerse or when something's created. And I've got it as modified. It's only when it's modified. Table name, of course, is contacts. Scope is organization. And then the select columns, and this is important, you need the schematic name of the column that's going to function as your trigger so that it doesn't trigger every single time that you change the record. So we have this one field, right? And that is the actual trigger. So that's the trigger, simple enough. And then what do we have to do? Well, we have a lookup. We have a lookup from the contact, which is what we're on when this happens, to the account. In this case, it's the company. So I click Get the Company. I'm looking for accounts. And naturally, what I'm putting in here is the what's called parent customer ID, but it's also called customer name. So that means I clicked here and I added some dynamic value, which is the company name. So now I'm getting the company. All right, so what is the next one? The next step is the customer voice send a survey. I left that named just the way it is so that you could find it easily in Power Automate. So you add this step, and who are you sending it to? Well, it needs to be the email address of the contact. Be careful here a little bit because companies have email addresses too. So make sure you select the email address of the contact. It'll ask you for the project in customer voice, which you'll select. It'll ask you for the survey, which you'll select. And then the default template is the template that exists in customer voice. This is important. There are templates in the DataVerse. That's not these templates. These templates are the ones that exist in customer voice. And we'll double back and show you where that exists in a moment. But what you want to do is you want to make sure you show all the parameters. Because when you show all the parameters, what you'll find is you'll find your variables. And if you take a look at this, you'll see it comes up as item/full name. It's only pulling that because it knows that you created those variables. So you have to do that first. And then what you do is, just as you might expect, you would just grab the full name from the contact. And in this case, you have to be careful. You're not grabbing the account name from the contact. You're grabbing it from when you get the company. So you want to get account name from this step. If I hover over this, you can see get the company, that's the reference. And here you can see trigger outputs, which is the trigger right here. So we're getting the full name from the contact, and we're getting the account name from the company. And I'm just going to stop right there and explain that this is a dead simple situation. There are some of you out there that will absolutely be doing something a little bit more complex. For instance, it might be that you have a table that has lookups to both the contact and the account. If you do, and if you're triggering or if you're the object of the focus of your Power Automate is in fact that particular table, which has those two lookups, then what do you suppose you'll need? You'll need a get the contact and a get the account. You'll need two steps to retrieve that data and then operate against it. So what have I got? What are the components? Let's go back for a minute. We go back to here. We know that we have these two new variables. We reference those variables here in item/item/. We pull that dynamically. And then we will be sending this dynamic survey out. Let's test it right in place. So here I am. I'm on the contact. I'm going to switch this to pre-appointment. I'm going to click Save. Now that theoretically should trigger the flow. So I'm going to go back and we'll see if this thing is running. And it ran an hour ago, so let's go ahead and refresh this and see if it's running. 2 seconds ago it's running. And now it's still running. It succeeded. We could take a look at the results. you can always look at results by looking at raw outputs and raw inputs if you want to. You can just see the results raw right here. But from a functional standpoint, let's just do it by looking at the actual inbox of the recipient. So you can see now that we are in the recipient's mailbox. This is Barak Dondarian's mailbox. And very typically you'll see this happen. This is just the way it is, but you'll sometimes see this in junk because it is actually a survey, right? Junk email, there it is. In fact, I should probably make sure that this is not junk, so I could move this to the inbox. It's not a bad idea. And you can see why this came. It's because the message came from surveys@email.formspro.microsoft.com. So you can imagine how that might not always land in the inbox. All right, so let's take a look at this though. If I double click this now, it says, welcome to the program. Please complete this survey before we have our first meeting to discuss the program, and then go ahead and click Start Survey. And let's see if our variables were passed. And they were. So, hi, Barak Dondarian. The survey is to help inform a scheduled meeting, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. And does the company, right? Blackfen Cloud. So we have these variables that came through just no problem. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to put an answer in. I don't have to, but I'm just going ahead and say between 1 and 6 months. And our resource can devote 6 to 10 hours per week, and I'm going to click submit. So now I'm submitting this survey. Now you see here, this will help form the discussion on the date. Now, what's interesting there is this is what happens when you don't pass a specific variable. Now, I purposely did this. How would you, if you happen to have that, how do you suppose you might populate that? There's a few different ways that you could do that. Probably the best way to do it would be to create and I'm going to slide this back here, is back in here you would have a date field right on the contact that would be upcoming appointment time or something like that. The other way to do it, a little bit more complicated, is to have perhaps a lookup to an appointment, which you could very easily create. We do this all the time with upcoming activities and things like that. So you would have a lookup, and then you would call that lookup using the get record by ID, just like we did with account, and we'd pull that date that way. And then another way, maybe a little bit more sophisticated, is a fetch XML that grabs the contact, grabs the appointment off the contact with a specific appointment topic or something, or a characterization or something like that. But we would get that date, and we would create that variable, and then we would pass that variable to the survey, and it would show up just like you saw that notification. All right, so that's it. The only thing left to do at this point is to actually show you where the results reside in the DataVerse, because that can become quite important as well, because you might want to do something with that. So they're not going to show you, this is a kind of a customized version of Dynamics, but as you can see, but they're not going to show you the customer voice surveys anywhere for the most part. So what you have to do is you have to either edit your sitemap on the left here to put those in, survey results or something, or what you can do is you can do this. So I'm going to go to advanced settings. I'm going to jump in the back end here real quick. And once I'm in the back end, then I'm going to use the funnel icon, as you've probably seen before, and that's the old-fashioned advanced find. Now this is just a way to see these voice surveys before you decide that you want to put it on your sitemap. You might have to build yourself a little app if you have to, just to look at them. But this is a shortcut kind of in a way. This allows you to get to that old-timey advanced find, which lets you look at everything in the database using an ad hoc query. So now what you're looking for here you can see we have customer voice, and that's what you're going to be looking for here. So customer voice survey question responses, customer voice surveys, customer voice survey responses. Now, I will show you though that all of this customer voice stuff is just available to you. If I just click on customer voice surveys, I'll go ahead and find one. There it is. If I open it, it'll open up. And then what I can do is to find related information to it. I mean, to some extent, it's not the best, to be honest with you, it's not the best interface. But you can see here that we've got the invites and then we've got the responses underneath the survey. So this is what a response looks like. I open up this response and you can see there's layers here and there's related data. But if you take a look at this, you've got the original question and you've got the response. So you can see my responses here that I just did. You can see when, you can see who, from who. So it's really quite, you can see here my variables, company name. If I had that date field, it would be there. That's a personalization. So you get a lot of data. There's no question about it. There's a lot of, this is customer voice survey response, and you can see your invitations and all kinds of things like that. So there's plenty of data for you to look at and to act upon. You just have to know how it's organized and how it's sort of related to each other. For instance, as you might imagine, the customer survey response is a many-to-one relationship with the response details is a many-to-one relationship with the actual response itself. The response is like the header, and then you've got the survey response details, which are individual records here. But anyway, the point is that is how you use Power Automate, variables, and then where that data lands in the DataVerse when you use customized customer voice surveys. I hope that helps. Thanks.